Hello friends, today I'm going to show you one deceptively simple exercise that sounds terrible, but will make changing chords easier and will make everything else that you play on the instrument sound better. Let's get started. You can skip right to the end of this video and play the exercise along with me, but I urge you to stick around so we can talk about how to practice it and why we are practicing this exercise. But it sounds a little bit something like this. We call it the 1, 2, 3, 4 exercise, or sometimes the spider exercise because it crawls its way across the fingerboard. So conceptually, it's very easy. We're using every finger going up the strings. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the corresponding fret, and then across the next string, and doing the same. All the way up, we come back down. 4, 3, 2, 1, back down the strings. But the real question is why? This exercise is really helping us with 3 aspects of technique on the instrument. Finger independence, playing with a legato left hand, as well as linking up the attack between our right and our left hands, or that we're plucking the string when we actually should be. So let's talk about those 3 aspects. Finger independence is, well, pretty elementary, right? We want our fingers to do the right thing by themselves at the right time. But if you've been playing uke for a while, you know this isn't nearly as easy as it seems. It can sometimes be quite frustrating, especially for adult beginners, to play this instrument because we're developing new fine motor skills with our fingers. But if you think back to maybe when you learned how to type, it probably seemed fairly foreign at first to do something like this, but that now seems very natural because it's something we do every day in our life. And I promise you that with practice and practicing exercises like this, taking it outside of the concept of music and thinking about how do we just work this tool that is ukulele, you can develop that finger independence. And we should note a couple things, that your fingers are not independent. They're not all independent muscles. You'll note if you try to bring your ring finger down, that your pinky and your middle finger come with it because they share some pieces here. And getting those separated is very tough. Your thumb and your first finger on either hand is probably very easy to move independently. But the other fingers are going to take a little bit more work. But the reality is, although physically we share some similarities between those fingers and the ligaments that they use, a lot of it's up here. It's really just being able to separate mentally what each of those fingers are doing. And exercises like this help with it because we have the time outside of music to think about the technique. Now, what about legato? What is legato? Legato is our default method of how we want to play, which is long and connected. Making notes short is very, very easy. We can all play a short note. That's nothing. Playing a long, connected line is very hard. And the way that we do this is with what's called a heavy left hand, which we're going to talk about in just a minute when we talk about practicing this. But the basic concept is that we want to leave the fingers down as long as possible. Efficiency of motion. If we don't need to move one of these fingers, why should we? We're just making more work for ourselves. And lastly, we want to be aware of when we are attacking the string. We want to pluck the next string as soon as the finger goes down. And again, this is much easier said than done, but in an exercise like this, you have time to think about it. So let's talk about how to practice this. And now a message from our sponsor, which is also me, because I have a new record coming out in the beginning of November that you can pre-order now, but we're also doing a very limited run of clear vinyl singles before the album itself comes out. This is an album that you probably don't want. It's a series of duets for accordion and ukulele. But if you think that sounds cool, click the link below. Now back to the lesson. The most important part of this is how do we practice this? Any of us can play individual notes like this. What's written on the tab is simple. To make it sound beautiful and connected, legato, that is what is hard. So let's talk about going up the scale here. So as we start with our first finger on here, 2, 3, 4. Now note at the end of this, when I've played all 4 notes on the G string, all 4 of my fingers are still down because I don't need to play anything until I get here. And when I play this first fret of the C string, see how all of these are still down? because I don't need them yet, and I don't want to create a space between these two notes. Then we sound like we're swapping strings, where if I keep that pinky down and let those notes run into each other just a little bit, we get a much smoother connected feel. So when we're practicing this, and we want to practice very slowly, we want to make sure that each note is long and held for its full value. Note, as I go across the strings, all of my fingers are staying down on the fingerboard as long as possible. And when we come down, obviously we're going to reverse all of this. And this is where I find it's harder for most people, is descending the scale. When I get here, my pinky is down, my ring finger's down, my middle finger's down, my first finger's down. So all I have to do is lift up one of these fingers. But then the key comes when we go to the next string. My first finger's playing this. It can't go anywhere. It needs to stay on that B flat on the first fret. But when I place my pinky down on the E string, these two fingers are going to follow it. So that when I come down, all I have to do is lift up each of those fingers, as opposed to do what I like to call a tap dance on the strings, or pick up and put down at the same time. So I'm going to play this nice and slowly, and I just want you to watch my hands as I do this. Keep everything down. Minimizing the space between each note. Get all those fingers down. Now we're going to try it together very slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Spending just a few minutes each day on seemingly simple exercises like this leaves us more time to think about playing music. Because when we're playing a song, we're thinking less about technique and what our fingers should be doing, and more about music itself, which is always our ultimate goal. Join me over on the Tin Man's Magic Ukulele Club, where this week we are discussing 5 more exercises to dive further into finger independence on the instrument. I'll see y'all next week.